Hey guys, yeah, welcome back to my channel. Today thank you so much for stopping by. In this video we'll be sewing these two pieces that you can see on your screen. So in my last tutorial we drafted out the pattern. In this video we are going to be joining our pieces together. So if you've not seen the pattern drafting tutorial, the link will be in the comment section. So after drafting out my pattern, I went ahead to place my pattern on my fabric folded into two. So we'll start by sewing the pants first. My fabric is folded into two and this is my front pattern. So what I did was to add 1 inch to the center front of the pant, which is going to be the stitching allowance for the center, and for the side I will also be adding 1 inch stitching allowance. Remember, I didn't add any stitching allowance to my pattern paper. So the waistline of the pants, what I have there is 7.5 inches. My waist circumference divided by 4 is 6.5 inches, and I have 1 inch there for my dart intake. So after adding the allowance, I went ahead to notch my dart, and this is what I have. Next thing I will do is to retake my dart. So I'm going to remark my dart. What I'll do first of all is to mark the 1 inch stitching allowance. Okay, I'm going to take that before marking my dart. So I'll sew along the 1 inch following the shape that I already have. After doing that, I'm going to go in after the 1 inch by 4 inches, which is my nipple to half of my nipple to nipple measurement, and I'm going to mark the length of my dart, which is 3 inches. I'll connect into a straight line and I'll take half an inch on both sides of the straight line. So I'll head over to my sewing machine to take this part out. The same thing I did on the other side, I'm going to repeat here. I'm marking my stitching allowance on the crotch area, which is 1 inch, and then I'm going to go in by 4 inches, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement. I'll go down by the dart length, which is 3 inches, and I'll take half an inch on both sides. So I'll sew the crotch area and I'll take in my dart. This is my back pattern. I'm going to add my zipper allowance to the back. So I'm adding 1.5 inches as my zipper allowance, and I'm going to stop at the hip line. So on the side I'll be adding 1 inch just like I did for the front, and then I'm going to cut out the crotch area and the zipper allowance. So on the crotch area I just added half an inch, which I'll be using to sew the crotch together, and I added 1.5 inches as my zipper allowance. Okay, so now that I'm done cutting the back, I'm going to go ahead and notch my zipper allowance. The 2 inches that I added to the pattern while we're drafting is to give room for the butt to sit well, while this 1.5 inches is the zipper allowance. I hope you are not confused. So I'm going to remove my pattern paper and I'm going to take in half an inch after the zipper allowance. Remember, I left half an inch there for my stitching allowance. So I'll mark half an inch like this to the length of the crotch. So this is where I'm going to sew. After doing that, I'm going to retake my dart. Okay, so I'm taking the dart after the zipper allowance. I'll go in by 4 inches, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement. I'll go down by 4 inches, which is the length of my dart, and I'll take half an inch on both sides and I'll connect. So I'm going to repeat the same thing on this side. So the zipper allowance, I'll be sewing a gather stitch from the waist down to where I want the zipper to stop, and then I'm going to continue from there with a strong stitch. So I'm going to do that and I'll take in the darts for the back. So after doing that, this is what I have for the front. I've taken in my dart, as you can see. I've also sewn the crotch area, and I did the same thing for the back also. I used my gather stitch to sew from the waistline down to where I want the zipper to stop, and from there I used the normal stitch to just sew all the way down to the length of the crotch, and I also took in my dart. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to place them right sides facing right side. I'm going to place the front on the back and I'll start pinning the sides. So remember, I left 1 inch for my stitching allowance. So after pinning, I'm going to use my chalk to mark out the 1 inch all the way to the length of the pant. I'm using my chalk to mark the 1 inch stitching allowance out because I want to sew exactly on that 1 inch. Okay, so after pinning, I'll go ahead and mark my 1 inch all the way down, and then I'm going to pin the other side of the pants and I'll mark my 1 inch all the way down. After doing that, I'll head over to my sewing machine to sew. On the crotch area, I'll also pin the crotch together, and I'll go ahead and use half an inch to sew all the way. After sewing, guys, this is what I have. I went ahead to turn it to the right side. So the next thing I'll do is to lose the zipper area. So I used gather stitch earlier. What I'll do is to just open the zipper allowance up, as you can see. So since I used the gather stitch, it's very easy for me to open it up. Okay, so what I'll do now is to cut out my band, but before I do that, I'm going to measure around the waist area. And what I have here is what I'll be using to cut out my band. I have about 31.5 inches. I went ahead to cut out this long piece of fabric, which is 3 inches. The length is 3 inches. It's supposed to be 3.5 inches. Remember, I took out 1.5 inches before I started placing my measurements. So I'm going to replace it using this band. On fold, the band is supposed to be 2 inches, so I can use half an inch to join the band to the pants, but I did not have enough fabric. That is why I'm using 1.5 inches. So what I'll do is to fold the band like this, and I'm going to pin the band to the waistline of my pants. So before you sew your band, if you have interfacing, go ahead and iron your interfacing to strengthen your fabric, but I don't have that, so I'm going to just go ahead and pin my band to the waist area of my pants. I'll pin from one end, that is the zipper allowance area, to the other end. Okay, so after pinning, you're going to head over to your sewing machine and use half an inch to sew all the way around. After sewing, you can overlock the rough edges of the waist area. After sewing the band in place, this is what I have. The next thing I'm going to do now is to fix my zipper to the zipper allowance. So you already know where your zipper allowance is. So what you do is to go ahead and fix your zipper, and then the last thing we'll do is to hem the base of the pant. So I left 1 inch as my folding allowance. I'm going to fold inward, as you can see me doing, and I will stitch all the way around. After fixing the zipper and also folding the hem of my pants, this is what I have. So that is all for the sewing of this pants. Now that we are done sewing the pants, we'll proceed to sew the shirt. So I'm going to go ahead and place my pattern on my fabric folded into two, and I'm going to cut. So after cutting, this is what I have. So I have the front and the back. The back is on fold, and I have two pieces for the front. Okay, so I went ahead to add 2 inches to the base of my shirt. I'm going to explain why soon. On the shoulder area, I added half an inch for the front and the back. So the side of the shirt has a little bit of curve, so that is why I added these 2 inches. So what I'll do is to connect from the center like this in a curve all the way to meet where the pattern paper is. Okay, this is to give it that shape that you can see at the side of the shirt. So what I'll do is to just cut from this center a little and work my way all the way to the side, as you can see me doing. Okay, so it's supposed to be a curve, it's not supposed to be this sharp. So use your chalk to trace it out first before cutting. So after cutting, this is what I have for the front. After cutting, I'm going to notch the 2 inches for the placket, so I know where my folding is going to stop. I'll use my chalk to mark the 2 inches. First of all, I'll remove my pattern paper and I'll notch on the base. I'll also notch on the neckline area. After doing that, I'll open my fabric up. So I have two pieces, one for the left hand side and the other one for the right hand side. The next thing I'll do is to fold in the 2 inches allowance. I'll fold a little and I'll fold over. The folding is going to stop at the notch, okay? And then I'm going to run a straight stitch on that line. After doing that, I'll also trim out the side of the back. So I'm going to place the front fabric on the back and I'll trim out the side. This is because I want the sides to align when I'm sewing. Okay, I'll trim all the way like this. So after doing that, we have the same length on the side. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and remove my pattern paper for the back, and this is what I have. So your back should be on fold. Okay, So I've gone ahead to sew the button area, and this is what I have. I went ahead to just run a straight stitch across the fold. So I've done this. I also repeated the same thing on the other side of the front. What I'll do now is to arrange both front and back piece together. So this is my back piece. The right side is facing me. I'm going to place the two front piece on the back piece, right sides facing right side. I'll arrange everything in place. After doing that, I'll head over to my sewing machine to use the half an inch that I left as my stitching allowance to sew the shoulders in place. The next thing we'll do now is to cut out the sleeves. So my fabric is folded into four. I'll be cutting the two sleeves together. So the first thing I will do is to come in from the folded edge by 3 inches. Okay, I'm coming in like this by 3 inches because the sleeves has pleats on the shoulder area. So this 3 inches is what I want to use to achieve the sleeves, the pleat, sorry. So if I open my fabric up, I'm going to have 6 inches for the pleating. The next thing is to determine the length of your sleeves. I'm using 12 inches. So I'm going to mark the 12 inches and I'm going to also roll a straight line connecting the 3 inches. Okay. So this is what I have. The next thing I'm going to do now is to come down on this open edge of the fabric by 5 inches, and on the closed end I'll go in by 3 inches. So I'm going to connect from the 3 inches line. Okay, I'm just working my way all the way to the 5 inches. So make sure you measure it and it's enough for the armhole area. So after measuring, I went ahead to cut. Okay, I'm going to cut and stop at that 3 inches line like this, and I'm going to notch the 3 inches. So the 3 inches now I'm going to gather it to form the pleat. The other part that I'm notching is the original armhole area. Okay, so this is what I have. Just make sure you confirm that is enough for the armhole of your shirt. So I'm going to measure to reconfirm. I measured and it's not enough, so what I'll do is to go down by another 1 inch, as you can see, or half an inch, and then you are going to trace it out like this. So mind you, after pleating you can still count whatever you have there, okay, on the pleat to fit into the armhole area. Next thing you do is to figure out if you want your sleeves to be fitted, but it cannot be fitted because we already have a pleat there. But if you want to make it small, you can do that. Just place your round arm plus allowance. Okay, I just connected mine straight down, so I'll cut off the excess fabric on the base and on the side. Okay, so this is what I have for the sleeves. So for the base, I want it to be I don't want it to be too big on the base, so I went ahead to mark 7 inches, and then I connected it upward like this. So I'll be cutting out the excess fabric from there. So this is what I have for my sleeves. So the next thing I'll do is to open my sleeves up, and I'm going to gather from the first notch to the second notch. Okay, that's on the upper part of the sleeves. On the base, I'm going to fold a little. Okay, I'm not folding too much. I'll fold twice like this to create casing for my elastic band to pass through. So guys, I've gathered the upper part of the sleeves. This is what I have from one notch to the other notch. Okay, so this is what I have. I'm going to now sew this to the armhole area of my shirt, but before I do that, I'll be passing my elastic band through this casing. You can see how small my casing is, so my safety pin cannot even pass through this casing. So I'm going to be using a bobbin pin to pass this elastic band. The wideness of the elastic band is my round sleeve measurement. I didn't add any allowance. So what I'll do now is to pass the elastic band through the channel, as you can see. Once I get to the end, I'll use my pin to hold it down. Okay, and then I'll use my pin to also hold the other end of the elastic band down. Then you can head over to your sewing machine to just tack it. After doing that, I'm going to repeat this same thing that I did on the sleeves. I'll do it on the other sleeves. You can see that my channel is really small, which is what I want. So when folding, don't fold too much, so it's not coming out looking too bulky. So now I've joined the shoulder area of the front and the back. Next thing I'll do is to mark the center of my sleeves, and I'm going to place where I marked to the shoulder joining, as you can see, and then I'm going to pin. After pinning, I'll head over to my sewing machine to sew all the way around. Okay, I'll also pin the other sleeves to the other armhole area. Okay, after doing that, I'm going to arrange my shirt in place, and I'm going to sew on the side. So when sewing on the side, you're going to sew your stitching allowance, and if you want to take in your ease allowance, if you want it to be really tight, you can take in both stitching allowance and ease allowance. So it depends on how fitted you want your shirt to be. Okay, so after sewing the sides, I'll also go ahead and hem the base of my shirt. Okay, after sewing, guys, this is what I have. Okay, I've sewn the sleeves in place. I've also sewn the side. Okay, so the next thing I'll do now is to cut out the collar. So before cutting out the collar, I'm going to place my tape on the neckline area, and I'll measure from the front all the way. Okay, I'll measure from the front all the way to the other end, just like you see me doing. Okay, so whatever you get is what you'll be using to cut out your collar. After measuring mine, what I had was 16 inches, almost 16 inches. So that is 16 inches. I'll bring in the fabric for my collar. This is it. I'll fold it into two like this, and then I'm going to fold it into four like this. So if you have interfacing, iron your interfacing to your fabric first before you start cutting. Okay, the first thing I'll do is to mark my starting line. So I'll be marking half an inch on the base of the collar. This half an inch is going to serve as my joining allowance. Okay, so I'm going to connect like this. After connecting, I'm going to be dividing the 16 inches that we had earlier after measuring the neckline area of the shirt by 2. So 16 inches divided by 2 is 8 inches. So from the folded part of this fabric, I'm going to come in by 8 inches. So I'll be marking the 8 inches. Okay, so after doing that, I'm going to connect it all the way to the base of the fabric, and I'm going to be taking 1 inch, okay, from the half an inch. Okay, you can see that the half an inch is not included in the 1 inch. I'm taking 1 inch after the half an inch, and I'm going to roll a straight line across the 1 inch, as you can see me doing. After doing that, I'll connect it downward like this. Okay, so I have half an inch and I have 1 inch. Okay, so the next thing you are going to do now is to go in by 1 inch. Okay, on this area I went in by 1 inch. After doing that, I'm going to determine the length of my collar. So I decided to go up by 2.5 inches from that 1 inch, okay, which is the end of my fabric on this end. So I'll place my ruler in a slant. From this 1 inch that I came in with, I'm going to slant upward. Okay, it's a slant. I'm slanting it to the tip of the fabric, as you can see. In case you don't understand what I'm saying, you can just follow what I'm doing. Okay, so after connecting on this end, instead of taking 2.5 inches, I'll be taking 2 inches on this end, and I'm going to place my ruler like this, and then I'll connect. After connecting, this is what I have. So we have both the collar and the collar stand together. So I'm going to cut the side. You can see that I'm leaving about half an inch, which is going to be my stitching allowance. So I'm not cutting on the lines, I'm cutting half an inch away from the lines. Okay, so after cutting, this is what I have. I'm also going to cut out this part, as you can see. Okay, and then I'm going to open the collar up. So this is what we have. So you can go ahead and iron your collar stay or interface into it, and then you sew all the way, just like you see me pointing out. Just sew all the way and leave the base open. After sewing, this is what I have. So next thing you do is to notch around the parts that you've sewn. After notching, you are going to flip the collar to the right side, and you are going to give it a good press. Okay, so I left about half an inch on the base that I did not sew. The half an inch that I marked out earlier, I didn't sew it because I want it to be easy for me to sew it to the shirt when I'm sewing. Okay, I'm going to show you guys what I mean. So after turning it to the right side, this is what I have. So the half an inch that I left on the base of the collar is what will be folding inward to finish up the collar. Okay, so after ironing your collar in place, you're going to bring in your main fabric. So I said I did not sew the half an inch. I didn't sew it all the way down, so it's easy for me to place it on the main fabric and sew. So I'll bring in the neckline of my main fabric. I'm going to turn it to the back. First of all, I'm turning it to the back. I'm not going to pin from the front. Okay, so turn it to the back, as you can see, and then you're going to pick one end of the collar and you start pinning. Okay, so you pick the side you want and you start pinning to the start of the neckline, as you can see me doing. Okay, so arrange everything in place and start pinning. You pin from one end all the way to the other end. You can see the part that I did not sew. It's very easy for me now to pin everything down. Okay, after pinning, I'll head over to my sewing machine to sew half an inch on a straight line. Okay, I'll sew all the way to the end. After sewing that end, I'll turn the collar to the other side. I'm going to fold this other one on this one, covering the stitch that I have on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to fold as you can see me doing, and I'm going to sew on a straight line to the other end. Okay, so after sewing the collar in place, guys, this is what I have. Okay, so the last thing you do is to open your buttonhole and then you fix your button to the shirt, and that brings us to the end of this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was helpful. Don't forget to like this video, leave your questions in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one.